All right, let's dive in. We're going to decode a massive conflict that's happening right now at the very heart of the global economy. You can think of it like this huge, high-stakes tug-of-war, and it's between some of the most powerful people on the planet. And believe me, it's shaping everything, from your savings account to, the price of your groceries.
So here's the central puzzle we're trying to solve, right? You look at the news, and on one hand, you're seeing headlines screaming about stock markets hitting all-time highs. Everything looks great. But then you flip the channel, and economists are warning about a recession just around the corner. So what gives? How can both of these things possibly be true at the same time? To figure that out, we've really got to look at what's driving each side of this story.
Okay, so the optimism part, that's pretty easy to get. Markets absolutely love certainty. So even a tiny hint of a political deal, like the one to end that recent U.S. government shutdown, that's enough to send stocks soaring. Basically, traders are betting that the politicians will get their act together and keep the economic engine chugging along.
But on the other side of the coin, behind the scenes, there's this really deep-seated fear. The people in charge, the economists and central bankers, they are worried about something called stagflation. And that is a truly toxic mix. It's when the economy slows down, but prices keep going up. It's basically a nightmare scenario for them because the tools you'd normally use to fix one of those problems just make the other one even worse.
So you've got these completely mixed signals. How do we make sense of it all? Well, let's start unpacking this whole puzzle, piece by piece. And the best place to start is with the major players. What we're looking at here is a genuine paradox. It just doesn't seem to add up. And the key to unlocking it, to really understanding it, is to look at these super powerful institutions that are pulling the economic strings in completely opposite directions.
And in the world of finance, we've got names for these players. We call them hawks and doves. And in this case, we're talking about two of the most influential financial players on the entire planet, the U.S. Federal Reserve and the European Central Bank.
And wow, their game plans could not be more different right now. On one side, you've got the U.S. Fed. They're playing the role of the hawk, totally laser-focused on crushing that stubborn inflation, so they're holding interest rates steady. But then you have the European Central Bank, the dove. They're way more worried about their fragile economy, so they've already started cutting rates to try and get things growing again.
So, what's their main weapon in this whole fight? It's something called monetary policy. The easiest way to think about it is like the main control panel for the entire economy. By tweaking interest rates up or down, they can either hit the brakes to cool down an overheating economy and fight inflation, or they can step on the gas to heat things up and create jobs. Okay, but here's where things get, well, a little weird. If you look at the actual economic data for both the US and Europe, it's, and I'm quoting a source here, strikingly similar. Inflation is coming down in both places, jobs are strong, so you have to ask, why on earth are they taking such wildly different paths? Well, it all boils down to one massive, totally unpredictable factor.
And that wild card? It's tariffs. Yep, these new, unpredictable government trade policies are basically throwing a giant wrench into the gears of the entire global economic machine. And it's forcing both the hawks and the doves to completely rethink their game plan.
Let me break down why this is such a huge problem. When a government slaps new tariffs on stuff from other countries, it makes those imported goods more expensive for everyone. And this creates a terrible dilemma. On one hand, it fuels inflation. That's the hawk's absolute nightmare. But at the same time, it slows down the economy, which is, you guessed it, the dove's worst nightmare. It is a classic stuck between a rock and a hard place situation. A total no-win. And look, this isn't just some theory from an economics textbook. The guy in charge of the U.S. Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, he said it himself, plain as day. This one issue, tariffs, is powerful enough to completely derail the plans of both of these huge central banks. It's forcing them to fly through some seriously turbulent, uncertain skies.
Okay, so you've got this big conflict, tons of uncertainty. So where's the smart money going? What are the big players betting on? To figure that out, we have to follow the money and see what global traders are actually doing.
And this chart here gives us a massive clue. What you're seeing is a forecast from the analysts at ING, and they're predicting that the euro is going to steadily get stronger against the US dollar all the way through 2026. So what's the thinking here? Well, the bet is that Europe's economy will start picking up steam, while the Fed over in the US will eventually have to start cutting its interest rates. If that happens, the tide turns and the euro comes out on top.
But what about right now? If we want to see what's happening today, we can look at a special tool the pros use. It's called the Commitment of Traders Report, or just the COT report for short. And honestly, it's kind of like getting a secret peek into the playbook of the market's biggest, most powerful players.
So this report basically splits the market into two key teams. First, you've got a group called commercials. Think of these as the big businesses that actually use the stuff being traded, like an airline that needs to buy jet fuel. They're not trying to gamble. They're just hedging their risk, trying to lock in a price for the future. Then you've got the other team, managed money. These are the big boys, the hedge funds, the massive investment banks. They are speculating. They're making huge bets on which way they think the market is going to go. And by watching what they do, you can get a really good sense of where the market might be heading.
All right, so where does all this leave us for the year ahead? Let's take a look at some of the major risks out there that could really tip the scales one way or the other in this big economic tug-of-war. The big takeaway here is that there are still a ton of wild cards on the table. You've got ongoing geopolitical tensions, like the war in Ukraine. That's a constant source of uncertainty. Over in Europe, there are real questions about government spending in Germany, not to mention political instability bubbling up in France and the UK. And then, back in North America, that huge trade deal between the US, Mexico, and Canada, it's coming up for review. That adds a whole other layer of what-ifs to the mix.
And all of this brings us right back to where we started, that central conflict. You've got the inflation-fighting hawks, you've got the growth-focused doves, and then you've got these unpredictable political wildcards like trade deals and instability, all pulling in different directions. So the big question, as we look ahead, is which one of these powerful forces is going to win this tug-of-war? And, maybe more importantly, how is that outcome going to shape your economic future?